we're talking about the incredible stories that have come out about, and images too, of these concentration camps. I mean, I don't know what else to call them really, where you have people who are basically rounded up and, kept, in these basically jails, mass jails, where you have children, we have malnourishment, where you have, like you mentioned that, I think the New York Times piece, where the people who work there, the stench in these facilities is so bad that they can smell it on their clothes when they leave the facility. I mean, it's horrific conditions that we're keeping children and other folks in as a way of scaring them back into the places where they are terrified to live. And this week, or I should say last week, there was a bill that the Democrats were pushing that involved funding, humanitarian funding to provide better facilities down there, but it also involved oversight, some measure of transparency, so that you don't have to have congresspeople smuggling out videos of what's going on in there. And it seemed like Nancy Pelosi was pushing and was going to push through this bill that it involved a certain amount of oversight. She did. Went to the Senate. Mitch McConnell brought up one that didn't involve any of that oversight. And you had the vast majority of Democrats in the Senate vote for it. And then Nancy Pelosi caved. Now, I think there's some other bigger problems. We're going to be talking to Jeff Hauser about what the Democrats are not doing for some unknown reason. But this is legislation. This is supposedly where they're going to make their mark. And part of it seems to me, is Nancy Pelosi is a little bit tone deaf as to what's going on in her party. And the other part of it could very well be, I spoke to Alex Perrine about this on the Majority Report last week, that Chuck Schumer is so inept that Nancy Pelosi knows that she can't get enough votes in the House because she can't trust Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in the Senate not to sell them under throw them under the bus. I mean, when the vast majority of Democrats in the Senate vote for this Republican bill, how do you not lose people in your caucus in the House? I mean, this is a real problem.
Well, I think that's exactly what happened, don't you? I mean, this was, and it wouldn't have cost setting aside all the other things about Pelosi, which we can talk about, but in this particular case, I think that she was, it illustrates one of the dynamics that's going on in the Congress, which is, again, that it's Chuck Schumer who is absolutely refusing to keep, if he had kept the Democrats all the way in line, they could have gone to those wobbly members of the House and said, "Hey, look, some of these guys, we only lost Manchin, right? That's the only one. So everybody else is on board with this. This is a party thing. You've got to stick with us." And she could have maybe, pushed it at least to the next level and tried to get another round out of it, right? And they were under the gun because, there was a case to be made that there's not been enough money, not that Trump couldn't have found the money. He can always find it for the things he wants, but nonetheless, there's a case to be made that we've got to get some money into this because these people, look at what's happening at the border. We've got to put some money down there. And so, there were a lot of cross currents on that particular thing. But, again, why? It would have cost Schumer and his people nothing to have, held out and not voted, and voted against that bill. The bill would have passed anyway. Yep. They could have just said, we're doing it on principle, blah, blah, blah. It would have hurt nobody to do that. But for some reason, and maybe ineptitude is what it is, or maybe it's just, they were anxious to get out of town. I don't know what it was, but it really did mess that whole thing up. And look, there is a serious problem with oversight of the entire Department of Homeland Security. I'm now convinced. I was a little bit leery about the abolish ICE thing, just because it seems so extreme. Well, I'm sorry. It is clear. We're reading those Facebook posts finding out that they're pulling some Abu Ghraib type stuff in these camps, where they're making guys run around with signs that say, I like men, and subjecting them to humiliation. Not that that should be a humiliation, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's sort of forcing somebody to, subject themselves to the jeers and whatever of their peers, and playing with them, this humiliation game that we saw in Abu Ghraib, and apparently it's happening in these camps too, perhaps not to the same, total, extreme that it was at Abu Ghraib. But hey, how do we know? Because everything is kept under lock and key. It's all sealed up. It's very difficult to get information out of there. Of course, the people who were detained in there, the prisoners, they're reluctant to say anything because they're totally at the mercy of the government and these guards and everybody else, or they're going to get deported. I mean, it's very difficult to sort out what's really going on. This whole system, which, people need to remember, the Department of Homeland Security didn't exist until after 9/11. It was created out of whole cloth to bring all these groups under one roof. And what it's done is kind of create this sense of wartime, war footing in this big, huge domestic law enforcement agency. That has got to change, and I really think that there has to be a wholesale reform of the entire system that has to do with domestic terrorism, fighting terrorism, the border, all of it, because it's just completely insane. It's gone completely out of control. Which, by the way, some of us who were observing it at the time said, "Guys, not a good idea. Department of Homeland Security that is a bad idea. Do not put everything under this one roof because it's going to go out of control." And it has. It has.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I mean, it's almost definitional, right? Like institutional rot. When you see this, it is an organization that's just simply gone awry. It needs to be torn down, reconstructed in a far less militaristic way. I mean, without a doubt, we can have borders, but we don't need to have them fortified as if winter is coming. These folks do not represent that type of threat. We had perfectly good success with releasing some of these immigrants who are awaiting trial, and with some type of like 80 to 90% rate of return. I mean, we've done this in the past. We can do it better, and it is really a national shame. We've got to take a quick break. Digby, if you'll join me for the third hour, I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.